Hey there, all you fantastic people. I hope your day has been absolutely wonderful. We're back for another exciting episode of What If Naruto Became the Windlord. Make sure to show some appreciation to the talented author behind this fanfiction. You'll find the link waiting for you down in the description. In this What If, Naruto finds some scrolls that contain Fūton Jutsus. When he goes to ask the old man about them, the answers he gets will change his life. If this What If has your imagination running wild, drop a comment down below and let me in on your thoughts. And don't forget to explore the array of other captivating what ifs available on this channel. Alright, without further ado, let's kick off this video and dive into this exciting journey. Tsunade stood before her old sensei in his office. The weather outside was nice despite the current situation. The war had been going on for years, and with no sign that it would let up soon. Even Jiraiya had come back to the village to help out and try some of the genin. And yet, gazing out the window of this office, everything seemed right with the world. Tsunade, said Sarutobi as he scanned a document. I have called you here for an important mission. No, I guess mission is the wrong term for this task. Tsunade blinked, clearly curious as to what he was getting at. Whatever it is, sensei, I can handle it, she said proudly. After all, she was related to the past two Hokages. Whatever the village needed done, she would do it, for she believed in what their village stood for. That's good, said Sarutobi as he set down the papers and leaned back in his chair. The matter has to do with the Uzumaki clan. Have you heard of them? Only in passing and on some mission reports, said Tsunade. They're the founding clan in Uzugakure, and are said to be powerful wind users. They have no strict fighting style, and seem to prefer the element of surprise in battle. Their methods are random at best and are very loud. Tsunade paused for a moment. Sensei, why are you asking me about them? Don't tell me that they... Relax, said Sarutobi as he waved her off. No, they haven't allied themselves with our enemies. I asked you what you knew about them because your grandfather seemed to know them very well. In fact, he once told me that the Senju clan and the Uzumaki clan have known each other since their founding, dating back well over 1,000 years ago. Now it seems that they are no more. What happened, sensei? Asked Tsunade nervously. Kyuubi attacked them, said the Hokage simply. Tsunade's eyes widened in fear and horror at that sound of that name. The most powerful creature ever to walk the earth had attacked them, and most likely left no survivors. Kyuubi was like a natural disaster that could alter nature just by whipping one of its 9 tails. How could anyone survive such an attack? There were survivors, continued the Hokage. And one of the last of the Uzumaki line has come here and asked to become a part of the village. I would like it if you would watch over her for the time being. Now wait just a moment, said Tsunade, but she got no further. A knock on the door interrupted her protests, and then it opened. Tsunade turned around to see a red-haired girl wearing an orange and black jumpsuit with the sleeves missing. She seemed to be a little chubby, but not overly fat. Her head was down, and she seemed to be carrying a present wrapped up in a bright red bow. A gift from my honored sensei, she said as she kept her head down. Tsunade felt a twinge of guilt. She was about to reject this poor girl who had lost everything to a monster. No telling how many brothers or sisters she once had. Deep down, Tsunade knew if anything ever happened to her own brother, she would fall apart. Thank you, said Tsunade as she took the surprising light gift from her. She opened the gift, looked inside, and saw a tag. A moment later the tag went poof, and a cream pie flew into Tsunade's face. And before she could say anything, Kushina had fallen over laughing. Oh man, I didn't know how much longer I could have lasted with the good girl act, she laughed while pointing at Tsunade. The look on your face was just priceless. Kushina looked up and saw that Tsunade's face was not only covered with cream, but tick marks as well. In addition, her face was burning red with rage. Time to die, Gaki, screamed Tsunade as she focused all her chakra into her fist. And then, Tsunade woke. Her opens opened and stared at the wall to her side, while her head continued to lie on the table. She was in a bar next to a casino. After having won a lot of money on the Chunin exams, Shizune had taken the winnings, and was able to get them squared off with most of her loan sharks. Personally, Tsunade wanted to pay them off all at once, but her assistant put her foot down. So here they were, trying to gamble the last of the money that they needed. That was until Orochimaru had showed up. He shows up, destroys a castle to get her attention, and then asks her to heal his arms. The nerve of him. But what struck Tsunade was what he was willing to pay her. If Tsunade healed him, then he would revive both her dead brother and lover. Now she was caught between a rock and a hard place. Heal a monster for personal gain, or let the one chance to get back those she lost slip away forever. So, while she was using the time he had given her to decide, she decided to do what most people do in this situation. Get drunk. Dreaming on me, Heim? Asked a familiar and lecherous voice that caused Tsunade to sit straight up. Sure enough, Jiraiya was sitting right in front of her with his famous grin on his face. Maybe that's why I woke with a start, said Tsunade as she looked away. Nightmares do that to a person. Same as always, said Jiraiya as he took a sip on his drink. Just get on with it, said Tsunade with a little aggression. Why did you track me down? It isn't really tracking when it only takes a week to find a person like you, said Jiraiya. I heard all about your recent winnings, and I know your habits better than anyone else. So finding you was a piece of cake. But you're right. I should just get to the point. Jiraiya then stared at her, all humor gone. We need you to become Hokage. No, said Tsunade. I swore I'd never go back to that place again. And you above all people should know the reason why I can't become Hokage. Because it was. Tsunade broke off as she remembered those two closest to her heart. Those who had died before their dream could come true. She then looked back at Jiraiya. How could you even think to ask me something like that? Jiraiya had planned to tell her that he was simply the worst choice. Maybe joke about it, and claim that he might have taken the job if the old fossils known to everyone else as the Hokage's advisors were gone. But, in all seriousness, he had to let her know the truth. He was related to the first two Hokages, and was a student of the Sandaime. She had great people and she cared deeply about others. If she didn't, she would never have left the village and began this path of self-destruction, thinking that she was to blame for their deaths. He would also tell her about the benefits of the job, like starting up that medical program she wanted. But what happened next stopped him. Don't eat all the food, you blonde baka, roared a voice from behind the pervert. Tsunade looked at the table in front of her to find the person who was being so loud. The first two had their backs facing her. One was Shizune, like she could ever mistake anyone else for her. The other one was much younger with black hair as well. Figuring it was him that was making all the noise, Tsunade prepared to yell at him when she caught sight of the third person at the table. Her eyes widened and she gulped loudly. He looked almost like Nawaki in Minato. She had seen him on TV, but she'd never think that she'd meet him in real life. Is it your game plan? Demanded Tsunade. By bringing him along? The answer is still no. Hey lady, keep it down, said Setches as he looked behind him. He looked Tsunade over once and then sighed. So this is the famous Tsunade that I have heard about. An old hag hiding behind a genjutsu. Care to say that again? Demanded Tsunade as tick marks appeared over her face. She should really act her age, commented Naruto as he took a bite of his food. She should be in a rocking chair sipping tea or something. Shizune gulped and tried to signal the two boys to shut their mouths, unless they want to see what she was like pissed off. And she really didn't want to pay for the damages Tsunade would cause to the bar. At least her genjutsu is nice to look at, commented Setches as he turned to face Naruto again. I bet underneath that illusion she's really wrinkly and flat-chested. Lightning flashed in the bar, and a very dark aura surrounded Tsunade. It was so dark that even Kyubi began to whimper like a frightened puppy. The next thing that the two boys knew was that they were blown through the wall of the bar. Tsunade then walked through the hole she had made in the wall, when she threw the two of them, and picked them up by the collar of their shirts. You two have some nerve to insult me, she said with fire in her eyes. Do you have any idea who I am? That's a Ba-chan who used to be someone people could look up to, said Naruto. But I don't see someone who was one of the Sannin, all I see is a drunk. Tsunade glared at him and dropped Setches. Either the blonde had guts, a death wish, or is a complete baka, she had no clue. Naruto then continued to say what was on his mind. I don't even think you deserve to be Hokage. That's good because I don't want that job, snarled Tsunade. It's a job for fools who die soon after. Naruto's eyes suddenly hardened, and he grabbed Tsunade by her wrist. He tightened his grip and soon became lighter. It didn't take long for Tsunade to realize he was floating in midair. I don't mind you getting angry at what I said earlier, he said. I don't mind the punch you gave me or holding me up like you were. But don't you ever insult the title of Hokage in front of me. And why not? Demanded Tsunade. I know who you are. I know what that village did to you at birth. I know how they have treated you in the past. It's the same wherever you go and it's never pretty. So why does the title of Hokage mean so much to you? Because of Oji-san, said Naruto. He was the person who believed in me and helped me start my training. He was the one who taught me how to read and write. He stood up to a teen who kicked his own daughter on the streets. He did his best to see that I had a chance to make friends and as close to a normal life as I could. And, in the end, he gave his life to protect the village just like the Yondium did. And don't think that's the only reason why the title of Hokage means something to me. Suddenly the wind began to pick up. It began to spin around Naruto and Tsunade, and he glared at her with a look of sheer determination. Becoming Hokage is my dream. Tsunade was at a loss for words. The same look and the same words as Dan and Milwaukee. She could almost see them standing behind Naruto, all of them giving her that look of determination. This only caused Tsunade to become irritated as she gritted her teeth. But before she could say anything or do anything, someone yelled out Senichashu. And several large snakes appeared in her line of vision. Tsunade let go of Naruto and jumped back, thinking that the attack was meant for her. But the snakes wrapped around Naruto, and he seemed to drop to the ground. "No more running, Naruto-kun," said Anko as she walked towards the falling blonde who was sweating bullets. A moment later, Hinata appeared next to Anko. "Please, Naruto-kun, we need you to give us an answer," said Hinata as a pleading voice. "How did you find me?" asked Naruto. "I got to use the skills I learned from Ibiki-sensei," said Anko as she licked her lips. Flashback. Yuden was tied up to a tride, too scared to move. Normally he'd be struggling to get free, but not in this situation. In class they had been going over means to escape, but in class they had used ropes, not snakes. Anko was standing next to him with her kunai lightly brushing against his cheek. "Alright, worm," said Anko with a grin. "Tell us where Naruto-kun went and this will all be over." "I won't," stammered Yuden. "I won't betray my friend." "Alright then," said Anko with a sigh as she began to walk away. "You leave us no choice." That was when Hinata walked into view. Her hands were brought together, and Yuden could see tears in her eyes. "Please, Yuden-kun," she said in her sweetest voice. "Tell us what happened to Naruto-kun." "Okay," said Yuden as a blush appeared on his face and a bit of blood came out of his nose. Then flashback. While Naruto began to get questioned by the two girls, with Setchus watching with an amused look on his face, Tsunade turned towards the bar to see Jiraiya standing there with his notepad out. Shizune was standing next to him going over the issue of Teen Shinobi that she had bought after she saw Naruto's face on it. According to her, she just wanted to know more about the shinobi that had helped them win so much money. Also, she liked the ads. "This brings me back," said Jiraiya with a small grin. Minato was also a lady killer, but had more than just two girls chasing after him. But he's young, so there's still time, I guess. Tsunade just sighed. Most of her earlier anger had gone. Then an idea popped into her head. If all went right, she could make some money and get Jiraiya off her back. Hell, even if she didn't win anything, they would be off her back. "Hey Naruto," she called out as she got all of their attention. "How about we make a little bet?" "What kind of bet?" asked the blonde. Anko released him and allowed him to stand up. "It's simple," said Tsunade with a smirk. "In Oni no Kuni, there is a tournament that is held every year that has been given the nickname the Second Chance Tournament. It was created for those who couldn't make it to the Chunin exam or would simply like a redo. It allows shinobi to showcase their skills to a neutral party who then contact their villages with their opinion, thus allowing a shinobi to reach the rank of Chunin. Also, many bounty hunter and other fighters compete as well to showcase their talents in front of potential clients, as well as earn a name for themselves. First prize is an automatic promotion to Chunin. Here is the bet. I want you to make it to the final round. If you can do that, I will admit that you can become Hokage and will become Hokage myself. However, if you should fail, then you must give up on your dream and leave me alone. I'll also throw in my necklace." As she said that last part, she pointed to the purple stone hanging from her neck. "Tsunade-sama," gasped Shizune. "That's fine with me," said Naruto. "But I won't just make to the final round, I'll win it." "Not so fast," said Setchus. "I'll also be entering this tournament. I can't think of a better stage to defeat you on than that." While that was going on, Tsunade moved next to Jiraiya. "Hey," she whispered into his ear. "What's that Armenian doing here?" "He seems to be a rival of Naruto's," he whispered back. "But never mind that now, what are you thinking? You know that there are two seeded jonin in the tournament that represent the host of this event. And you know the other reason for this exam." "Well, it's too late now," said Tsunade as she turned her attention back to the genin. "Naruto has already agreed to this, and a man should never back out of something that he gave his word to." Sasuke was going over some of the notes he had obtained from Sakura. From the village registry, there had been only two Uzumakis in the village. The first was Uzumaki Kushina and then his teammate. From what he could tell, Kushina had turned traitor even if the Hokage hadn't declared her a Nukenin. Also, all scrolls found in her home were taken by the Anbu, so that whatever skills she had were lost to the village. It took a little more digging, but Sasuke found that a person named Danzo was the person who had been in charge of her jutsu scroll recovery. After he had looked at all the information from the registry, Sasuke began to look at anything that had the word Uzumaki in it. There were several mission reports that were open to the public that had accounts of meeting shinobi of the Uzumaki clan. All of them seemed to mention them using wing-based jutsus and similar behavior patterns. But none of them mentioned what he had seen during Naruto's fight with Gar. Finally, Sasuke came to the beginning of the village's history, and what he saw shocked him. Apparently, the Shotai Hokage had sent a letter asking the Uzumaki clan to join the village. Frantically, Sasuke began to search through the notes and copies he had for their response. This was important, he just knew it. Nearly all the clans in the village came from various areas in Hinokuni. Those that didn't came here of their own accord. But Sasuke never heard of any Hokage that asked, no begged, another clan to join the village. Finally, Sasuke found the letter from Uzumaki Heron. Hey Hashirama, been a while hasn't it? Haven't heard from you since that time with Madara. How's the team? Look, about joining your village, I'll have to take a pass. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a great idea to unite the clans and create hidden villages. Hopefully this will lessen the death toll caused by the constant clan fighting. And I have nothing but respect for you. However, we can't have all three clans join together. Senju, Uchiha, and Uzumaki should remain separate for now or else we'll become too powerful, and whatever balance there was will be gone. Should you ever need an ally, know that Uzugakure will stand by you until the danger is over. Don't be a stranger. Kiin makes good ramen. And for you I will even pull out the good steak. Reading the note, Sasuke began to feel his eye twitch. It was so Naruto-like. Even at the bottom was a hand-drawn picture of a chibi man make a V sign and sticking out his tongue. Baka, Sasuke swore as his grip tightened. Welcome fight fans to the Oni tournament, exclaimed Kodo, who was standing in the middle of a giant arena. It was oval-shaped, but the stands were made of wood instead of stone like many other arenas. Also the seating went from the ground level to the 90th, with no barrier to protect them. Thus the higher level seats were the cheapest due to the health risks. The cameras were pointed at Kodo, who stood in the middle of a large stone circle. I'm your referee Kodo. And I'm her partner Juri, said the other announcer. Let's just hope that this doesn't end up like the Chunin exam. You were so lucky to be near all that beautiful death and violence, said Kodo with a blush. Just thinking of all the blood that was spilled makes my heart beat so fast. Juri gave her a deadpan expression. Sadist, muttered Juri. She then shook her head and got back to work. Now for the tournament setup. Of the 477 contestants that signed up, only 8 will be selected to compete, exclaimed Kodo. Everyone will be divided into 8 groups and will then fight in battle royals in different locations. The last man standing will advance into the tournament, and the rest will be taken to the hospital or placed 6 feet under. Also, 2 shinobi who are ranked as Jonin, will placed in the prelims to represent our hostess who will be awarding the grand prize. And now, please welcome the hostess of the tournament, Shion-sama, exclaimed Juri. A searchlight came to life and shined on a figure sitting on a silk cushion on a platform in the middle of the bleachers. She looked no older than 13, and had blonde hair and lavender eyes that almost seemed to glow. She looks familiar, commented Naruto. Currently he was floating in the air with his legs crossed. Next to him was Setchus, who had a bored look on his face. Not like I give a damn, replied the Amanin. Then, out of the corner of his only eye, Setchus saw Hinata and Anko beckoning them from an entranceway. Or rather Naruto. With a sigh, Setchus gave the blonde a nudge as Shion began to go over some of the rules in more detail. When Setchus had the blonde's attention, he jerked his head over to the girl's location. Naruto sighed as he floated over towards them. He knew what they wanted to talk about. Their relationship. He had been doing what all guys do in a difficult situation, ignore it and hope it goes away. Sadly, it didn't work this time. Once he and Setchus were in the entranceway, Naruto set his feet on the ground, and Setchus leaned against the wall. Like hell he was going to miss this show. Naruto's love life was better than cable. Alright Naruto-kun, said Anko at once. We need an answer. No more stalling. Please Naruto-kun, begged Hinata. Well, said Naruto with a blush as he scratched his cheek. The truth is that I like you both the same. A moment later Kunai barely missed his other cheek, and he was then grabbed by its owner. Do you think this is some kind of joke? Demanded Anko as a dozen tick marks appeared on her face. She was pissed. She had opened her heart to him and this is the answer that she got. On top of it she found out that this tournament was men only this year. The nerve. How dare you? Both me and Hinata put our hearts on the line here to tell you how we feel. The least you could do was be honest and tell us who you like better. I am being honest, said Naruto nervously. I like you both, but for different reasons. And besides, I never been on a date or anything in my life, so it seems weird just to say I like someone better than the other. Right. Why you began Anko as she pulled back her fist. Wait. Cried Hinata. Why should I? Demanded Anko as she paused on her assault. Because he's right, said Hinata. Anko raised an eyebrow as she lowered her fist. We did confess, but the problem is that neither of us had ever been in anything close to romantic with him. All we do is train and hang out. So when we told him how we felt, it must have seemed out of the blue. So what are we supposed to do then? Demanded Anko as she let go of Naruto. We could both date him, said Hinata. Anko looked ready to object, so Hinata decided that she'd better continue quickly. We date him for a while, and then Naruto-kun can decide who he likes being with better. And in the end we can still be friends because we all did it fair and square. Anko sighed. I guess I can agree to that, said Anko. Hinata smiled as Naruto nodded, happy that they weren't going to be fighting and treating him like a trophy. Little did he know that Hinata was smiling because she had scored the first point. She, not Anko, had found a way for Naruto to fairly pick who he wanted to be with, and no one got hunt. And that meant that Naruto was closer to becoming hers. A while later, Naruto was walking towards his assigned fighting zone. After he had met with Anko and Hinata, he had returned to see that everyone was now drawing lots. Naruto had drawn 1, while Setches got 6. Oddly enough, a lot of people were griping about getting those same numbers. It probably had something to do with what he had missed while talking to the girls. When he finally got to his destination, Naruto found a large stone square shape that he guessed was where he was going to be fighting on. However, there was only one other person there. He was shorter than Naruto, and had slicked back black hair with several small bangs in the middle. He wore typical fisherman garments which included a long-sleeved turquoise shirt with short black tights that extend halfway down his shins and straw bottoms, held up by a thin black belt. He also had a bag on his back and in his hand was a fishing pole. So, someone has the guts to fight the great Urashima Ura, declared the small man with a sinister-looking grin. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he stepped into the ring. He really didn't like this guy and he had only said one sentence. "Where is everyone else?" demanded Naruto. Ura began to laugh. It was a foul-sounding laugh that made Naruto feel sick. "You're the only one to show up," said Ura as he pointed at Naruto. It seems that everyone else was afraid to face a Jonin. "You're a Jonin?" asked a white-eyed Naruto as he pointed at Ura. The fisherman nodded and Naruto fought back a laugh. All in all, this short man didn't seem all that powerful. But then again, neither did Kakashi at times. But at least Kakashi had size. And before Naruto could say anything, Juri came onto the scene with the camera crew. "Juri here, and it seems that Uzumaki Naruto has decided not to listen to the advice of Shion-sama gave about fighting against Urashima Ura," she said as Naruto's jaw dropped. Hajime. At that same moment, Setches was also learning about what Shion had said, for he was also fighting a Jonin alone. Well, he was ranked as a Jonin at least. The man standing before him was tall and muscular. He had thick crew-cut blonde hair that was capped up by a large white headband. On his upper body he wore a sleeveless white jacket, although it was too small to cover his entire torso. His baggy bottoms were burnt sienna color, engulfed at the bottom by his long black boots, and held up at the top by a white belt. "This is Kodo here," said Kodo. It seems that Setches was the only one brave or insane enough to face Mamadoro Kuro. Will this brave genin survive or will Mamadoro rip him into beautiful shreds of blood and guts? I can hardly wait. Hajime. "Hey kid," said Mamadoro as he looked down on Setches. "I'll tell you what. I'll let you have the first move. Not that it'll help much." "Don't get too cocky team," said Setches as he unfolded his Titan blade. Setches then got into a charging stance. He had no idea what was going on in the mind of his opponent, nor what he could do, but there was only one way to find out. It might be dangerous, mainly because he suggested it, but then again he might just be cocky because he was facing a genin. Setches yelled out, "NarutoHinataAnko," and then leapt towards Mamadoro. As he went through the air, Setches began to twist his body around, while the Titan blade seemed to move around his body. Setches would do a somersault, and the blade would travel from behind him, between his legs, and then across his body. Then Setches would do a kick spin, and the blade would spin around an arm or leg. Mamadoro, who should have stayed still, dodged to the side. However, he wasn't fast enough to dodge the entire attack, and ended up getting slashed on his arm. Blood shot out of the wound, and Mamadoro took a knee for a moment while dealing with the pain. Blood was dripping down his arm, and Kodo looked like she had seen the fountain of youth. "Not bad kid," said Mamadoro as he slowly got back to his feet. Setches turned to face Mamadoro and began to point angrily at him. "Hey, you said that I would get the first move," yelled Setches. "And you did," said Mamadoro as he reached for his belt. "And now my body was memorized this pain." There, he grabbed a strange sphere that seemed to be attached to it and pulled it out. He held it up so that Setches could see clearly. "This is a Kibi Dango, and with it I will seal your fate." Mamadoro then squeezed the sphere, and a steam-like mist appeared which then seeped into his skin. Instantly the wound healed and Mamadoro underwent a transformation. His hair turned brown and fur seemed to cover his body, leaving only his face, chest, and palms untouched. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, Mamadoro has now shown Setches why he is known as Bujusoko no Mamadoro, said Juri with a slight pout. And things will only get worse for Setches, and Mamadoro will continue to lose his hotness. "I don't get what's going on and I don't care," declared Setches. NarutoHinataAnko. And with that, Setches attacked Mamadoro, who didn't move a muscle. Secha's attack hit him in the chest, but there was no damage. In fact, it was like Secha seemed to bounce right off of him. Momotaro then began his attack and punched Secha while he was falling backwards, causing the one-eyed genin to hit the ground hard several yards away. "I know what you're thinking," said Momotaro as he crossed his arms. "And you're right, that should have worked. However, my body has the ability to memorize any damage it receives. After that I just use a Kibi Dango, and I gain immunity from that attack, and I get a body upgrade. So, in short, every jutsu that you use against me just makes me stronger. Right now I'm using Bujusoko. Me no so." Momotaro watched as Secha got into a sitting position. He expected Secha to beg for his life or give up. But instead, Secha began to laugh. "Looks like I knocked the sense out of him. I have that effect on people." "Please," said Secha as he stood up. "All this means is that all I have to do is kill you before you can use one of those spheres. That should make things more interesting." Back with Naruto, he was easily avoiding all of Yura's attacks. Yura used his fishing pole like a whip, slashing out at Naruto who flew around his attacks. It seemed weird to Naruto that someone like this was considered to be a jonin. He wasn't fast or strong and his attacks so far were that of a beginner's. But people seemed to be afraid of him for some reason. Naruto couldn't make sense of it. "I've heard a lot about you," said Yura as he continued his attack. "But do you really think it'll last?" "What are you talking about?" asked Naruto as he dodged another attack with ease. "I heard that you were nothing but an outcast in your village," said Yura. "But now it seems that people are warming up to you. But that's only because you're strong and win. But as soon as you lose, they'll turn on you again." Naruto's eyes whitened slowly as he dodged another lash. "You know it's true. Deep down they haven't changed their minds about you. You're still the same outcast, but one they can use. Use and then throw away once they have no more use for you." Naruto then moved towards the edge of the arena, and was then stopped by an invisible force that caused him to bounce off of it. Yura smirked as his fishing line wrapped around Naruto and then pulled, causing dozens of cuts to appear on Naruto's body. Naruto fell to the ground in utter pain. "What the?" he gasped in pain, only to be whipped across his back. "That was too easy," said Yura as he whipped Naruto again. Blood was now beginning to soak the stones as Naruto's shirt was torn to shreds. "I've heard all the rumors and seen you on TV. In terms of power I fall short, but there are ways around that. You fell right into my mind game and never even noticed that I created a barrier. And now I think I'll finish you off." With that, Yura took of the bag on his back and opened it to reveal a box which he set on the ground. "This is Yami Itemu. Jayaku Tama Tobacco. Anyone who breathes in the smoke, other than the person who opens it, will begin to regress in age. This will make my victory as easy as killing a newborn baby." And with that, Yura opened the box. Naruto tried to get up and fly away, but his injuries were too painful, and the smoke came at him too quickly. Before Naruto knew it, the entire area was full of a white mist. And the effects were immediate. Naruto could feel his body shrinking. His life seemed to flow backwards before his eyes. He watched as he fought Gar, fighting Secha, a shinobi who pushed him to his limits. He felt the tear-filled joy of finding his cousin. He experienced Iruka accepting him for who he was. He saw himself meeting Hanzo, the great shinobi who believed he had the makings of a great shinobi. The feeling of Hinata's tears as she cried in his lap. The happiness of making his first friend, Anko. Sitting on the Hokage's lap as they looked over scrolls as he learned to read. And then, there was nothing. Yura felt Naruto's chakra slowly fade until there was nothing left. No one knew how hard it was to use this item. Oh, who was he kidding? What did it really matter if his opponent regressed too far? The end result was that he would die. With this power, strength didn't matter in the slightest. All enemies he had to fight would be reduced to their weakest moments, and made easier to kill. Suddenly, Yura felt a huge chakra spike. It was like nothing he had ever felt before. And it wasn't Naruto's. No, this chakra was much darker and pure evil. Yura looked around, trying to find the source, but it was like it was coming from every direction. Then, he felt something drip on his head. Slowly, shaking from head to toe, Yura looked up and saw the face of Kyuubi. "You have my thanks, human," said Kyuubi. Yura fell onto his back and tried to protect himself with his arms. "You can't be here," he cried. "Oh, but I am," said Kyuubi darkly. "Normally, for freeing me, I would spare your pathetic life. But I know the secrets of that little toy you use, and how long its effects will last. Pity this can't be permanent. And I haven't eaten in so long." And the last thing that Yura ever saw were the giant fangs of Kyuubi. Juri, who had been standing outside the fighting area, sighed. It was so boring when Yura did this. She couldn't see anything and thus couldn't report anything. But, thanks to previous experiences, she knew it was better to just wait outside. Suddenly the barrier vanished and the smoke began to clear. A few moments later, Juri saw Naruto on all fours blinking in confusion. She looked around for Yura, but it was as if he had vanished. Since Urashima Yura is no longer in the ring, I declare Uzumaki Naruto the winner, she declared. Setchus continued to use his Titan blade against Momotaro with no effect. It was as if his fur was tougher than diamonds. But still Setchus went on because he still had a few tricks up his sleeve. Once he was directly in front of Momotaro, Setchus made several hand signs and then yelled, "Raiden! Yokai Hime!" And out of Setchus' mouth came a lightning blast to spread out like a beam of light. This was a jutsu that Setchus never used against Naruto in their fight, because he knew it would have been weak against Naruto's wind jutsus. This was a long-range jutsu that could take out multiple opponents at once. But, when used point-blank, its power and effectiveness was greatly increased. The attack hit Momotaro, who was thrown back. Sadly, he landed on his feet. There were scorch marks on his chest, and sparks were still flying. There was also a thin line of blood coming from his lip. "Well, that was a surprise," said Momotaro as he took another small sphere. "That hurt a little. But now it's time for another Kibidango." Momotaro squashed it in his hand and once again underwent a transformation. His hair turned yellow, and his body became covered with blue scales. Golden feathers shot out of his arms to make it seem that he had wings, and his hands became claws. Bujusoko. Machi no So. Momotaro then jumped into the air and then seemed to dive onto Setchus, slashing him with his claws on the way down. And due to the force of the attack, Setchus dropped the Titan blade. Thinking that he had won, Momotaro seemed to fly up again and prepared for the finishing blow. But Setchus had his own transformation. The upper portion of his arm opened up and the cylinder came out. His hand turned flat and his fingers seemed to recline. Once it was done, Setchus pointed his mechanical arm at Momotaro and fired a high-pressured, supersonic stream of water that cut right through Momotaro's Bujusoko like a knife cutting through warm butter. Momotaro fell to the ground, bleeding and gasping in pain. "Now to finish it," declared Setchus as he pointed his gun arm at the fallen warrior. Once again, water shot out of it, but before it hit Momotaro, he was covered with steam. It was too late for Setchus to realize that while he had been falling, Momotaro had reached for one of his Kibidango. When the transformation was over, Momotaro looked like a brown werewolf with white-colored hair. His claws were also sharper now, like inch-long blades attached to every finger. "Bujusoko. Make it no so," said Momotaro as he flexed his fingers. "This is my fastest and favorite form. And now you die." With that, Momotaro raced towards Setchus. He knew there was no way he could turn his arm back to normal in time to make any hand signs. He smirked as Setchus pointed his gun-like arm at him, ready to fire the third attack. Like it would work now that he was immune to that jet stream. A blue light then shot out of it and shot towards his heart. And then it went right through him. Momotaro fell to the ground while continuing to slide, only to stop at Setchus' feet. "Baka," said Setchus as he began to manually turn his arm back to normal. "This arm can also fire the chakra saved up in it for a one-time blast." "Splendid," cried Kodo. "And Setchus is the winner." It was late at night in the village of Konoha. Most of its people were asleep. The few that weren't were on guard duty, having sex, or trying to get some sleep. All but one, and his name was Sasuke. He was currently in the former home of Uzumaki Kushina that he had managed to find. There had to be something that Danzo, whoever he was, had missed. With his Sharingan activated, he was sure he could find something that was hidden. Yet so far he had found nothing in the small cozy kitchen and sitting room. Once again, Naruto was on TV, and that fact pissed the hell out of him. Everyone in the village was talking about it. How Naruto had a chance to win first prize. How strong he had gotten since his academy days. All anybody wanted to talk about was Naruto. Never mind the few whispers he had heard about Itachi being in the area. No one seemed to care that the man that murdered his clan was close by, and nothing was being done. No, not when Uzumaki Naruto was too busy showing off. Sasuke walked into a room and scanned it. Apparently it had been intended as a baby room, judging by the crib. Right above it, painted in red, was the name Naruto with a large spiral underneath it. Also, all over the walls, were hand-drawn pictures of a chibi woman with word boxes next to her. In some cases she was making a V for victory sign, and in others she had her arms bent to make a heart. She said things like "Ka-san loves you, no matter what." And true strength is not measured by how little you fall, but in how many times you get up. And never give up and never go back on your word. Several toys were in the corners of the room, and there was also a bookcase full of old picture books. Sasuke felt sick just standing in this idiotic room and was about to leave when he noticed something. There was some strange chakra in the spiral above the crib. There was so little in it making it hard to detect, but it was there. Sasuke moved over to it and realized that something was sealed in the wall. Quickly he bit his thumb and then pressed it against the spiral. It glowed for a second, and then in a poof came a large scroll and the letter. Picking up the letter, Sasuke began to read. Dear Naruto-kun, if you are reading this letter then you have just graduated from the academy. I am so proud of you. And I know that you aren't taking crap from anyone. Members of our clan have signed this summoning scroll when they have reached adulthood. And now, your time has come. May you soar high on the wings that will help you realize your dreams. Hey, that had a rhyme to it. Love, Yuka-sen. At the bottom was another hand-drawn picture of the same chibi woman who seemed to be blowing him a kiss. Sasuke crumbled up the letter and threw it in the corner, and then went right for the scroll. My, said a voice from behind Sasuke. He turned around and saw Kabuto standing there with a small smirk. What do we have here? Has the Uchiha clan fallen so low as to needing to steal from his teammates? What are you doing here? Demanded Sasuke as he got ready to fight. He had heard from Kakashi that Kabuto was a traitor and knew to keep his guard up. But Kabuto just kept looking down on him. I was looking for you, he said simply. Orochimaru-sama has taken an interest in you and would like to extend to you a very generous offer to become his student. Why should I go with him? Asked Sasuke as he lowered his guard a bit. The next thing he knew was that Kabuto had kicked him right into the wall. That's why, said Kabuto. This village is making you weak. Right now the strongest genin in this village is Naruto-kun. Sasuke growled when he heard that. In fact, little Hinata-chan, who was kicked out of her own clan due to her weakness, is currently stronger than you are. If you stay here, your dream of killing Itachi will never come into being. Is that what you want? To let the man who killed your family walk free until some nobody takes his life? No one can kill Itachi but me, roared Sasuke as he got to his feet. Pity, said Kabuto. Right now Naruto-kun is closer to being able to defeat Itachi than you are. And he has been getting special training from Jiraiya of the Sannin. Don't you think that you deserve the same treatment at least? If you do then you should head to Oni no Kuni before the Oni tournament ends. But, if you are content to be trained by someone of Kakashi's level then stay here. And with that, Kabuto vanished as if he were being burned from existence. Sasuke stood there in that room for a while. He knew that Kabuto was a traitor, but he was strong. And so was Orochimaru who had killed the Hokage. The things he could learn swarmed through his head as Sasuke picked up the summoning scroll, and then strapped it to his back. Slowly, Sasuke walked towards the door and then turned around. He glared at the room full of love that seemed to be mocking him. He gathered his chakra and sent out a ball of fire to cause the room to catch on fire. And with that, Sasuke left the building knowing that soon firefighters would arrive on the scene. Orochimaru stood on top of a hill overlooking the large walls of the place that had once been his home. His arms, now discolored, hung lifelessly by his sides. He was sweating a bit due to the pain which increased as the days went by. He knew he had to either take a new host or have his arms healed. And as much as he wanted the Sharingan, Sasuke wasn't ready yet. It would be risking too much to train that body of his to face Itachi in 3 years. No, he had to get the boy ready to be the best possible host he could be. A smile appeared on his face despite the pain. He slowly turned around, and Kabuto landed behind him in a kneeling position. He then rose and took his place next to his master. I take it that it went well, said Orochimaru as they both gazed at the village before them. It was too easy, said Kabuto as he adjusted his glass. Sasuke-kun seems to be getting desperate. I found him looting the home of Uzumaki Kushina. Ah, said Orochimaru with a bit of fondness that surprised Kabuto a bit. That name takes me back. Kabuto blinked in surprise. He had never known his master to say anything like that with that tone of voice. And before Kabuto could think anything else, Orochimaru spoke again. Send word to the Sound 4, I want them in Oni on the day of the deadline. If Tsunade refuses and you end up fighting, they wouldn't be much help, said Kabuto. In fact, they would just be in the way. I know that, snapped Orochimaru in a more familiar tone. Regardless of how Tsunade responds, they will have a very special mission. A smile slowly appeared on his face. A mission that, if they succeed, will make my future seem much brighter. Danzo sat in his room alone. In front of him was a fresh cup of his favorite tea, which he planned on enjoying, while he waited to find out if Tsunade would be returning as Hokage, or if Jiraiya would take up the position. Either way he was fine with, for now at least. After what happened in the invasion, the village needed someone strong to show their power. If Jiraiya became Hokage, which would have been better in his opinion, the village would have a Sannin as a leader. If Tsunade became Hokage, something he hoped wouldn't happen, then she would most likely create her medical corps, and mission success rate would go up in a few years. While some of his minions suggested that he should take this opportunity and become Hokage, he knew it wasn't the right time. Orochimaru was still alive and would use their past deals as leverage to get him to do what he wanted. And then there was the matter with Itachi. Should he ever speak of what really happened about the Uchiha clan, then he would be doomed. No, he needed to wait for the right time. Suddenly one of Danzo's followers appeared before him in a puff of smoke. "Danzo-sama," he said, and he knelt before the older man. "A fire has broken out in the village." "A fire?" asked Danzo with some annoyance. "Hi," said the agent. "It will take some time to figure out the origins of the flames. However, we believe that there are two possibilities. The first was that it was an accident caused by kids. The building had been abandoned for some time, and we think there is a strong possibility that kids were using it as a place to smoke or something of that nature. However, given what happened during the invasion, it is also possible that it could have been a group of Odonins who had been hiding there since the invasion failed, as part of a backup plan by Orochimaru." Danzo nodded. "Yes," he said slowly. "A fire would make things harder for us to gather any information on them now that they have left that location." Danzo looked down at his agent, and a thought came to him. Where was this fire? "The old Uzumaki home," replied the masked one. When Danzo heard that, he could not hide his shock and fury as his eye opened wide. He stood up quickly, which caused him to knock over his tea. He wanted to strike out at the nearest person and unleash his full anger, but he held himself back. Silently he cursed Kushina and her seal. Flashback. Danzo stood in what should have been Uzumaki Naruto's room. It had been several days since Kushina had vanished, and Danzo had already written her off, regardless if she was dead or on the run. He had easily found her jutsu scrolls, each one contained powerful wind jutsus like Fūton, Shinkuha and Fūton, Shinkajuku. They would give him a powerful advantage when the time came to take power. All that was left was Kushina's summoning scroll, which he believed was behind this seal in her son's room. "This is a very interesting seal design," said one of his agents as he studied the seal. "The chakra inside of it seems to be cycling down." "It doesn't matter," said Danzo as he took his place in front of it. Once he was directly in front of it, he took out a small vial. Inside of it was a bit of Naruto's blood, which his agents had obtained in secret. Danzo then put a few drops onto his thumb, and then pressed it against the seal. Moments later the red lines of the spiral turned a bright blue, and from the center came a bright light which shot at Danzo's forehead. "Danzo-sama," cried out one of Danzo's followers. But soon he was taken aback by what he saw, for on Danzo's forehead, someone had written "You're too young, honey bun." And next to it was a smiley face. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Danzo after he himself saw what was on his head. "This is most interesting," said the agent who had been studying the seal. Danzo turned at him and glared. "Why didn't it work?" he demanded. "Well, Danzo-sama," the agent began, "I believe that this is a time-lock seal. You see, I believe that when Kushina created it, she wasn't worried about anyone else in the village taking the scroll. She must have assumed that she would still be around, and thus created a seal to keep out the one person she didn't want the scroll to go to until he was ready. As I said before, the chakra seems to be cycling down almost like a timer. Once it reaching a certain point, the seal will be so weak that anyone's blood can open it. Until that time, the only one who could possibly open it early would be its creator. Well, that is my theory anyways. So basically, we can't open the seal right now," restated Danzo. Silently he cursed Kushina and her skills. He could almost see her, grinning at him mockingly. If he had only gotten a bit of her blood, then he could get to her scroll. But for now, he would take her jutsus and make them his own. And when the time came, once the seal was weak enough, he would try again. Then flashback. In his room, Danzo growled at the memory of Kushina's seal. He had gone to check on it several times in the past few years, and each time saw that it had weakened slightly more. Maybe this could have been the year he had been waiting for. And now it was gone to a fire. "I will speak to the council in the morning," said Danzo to his agent as he regained his cool. "I will have them assign Genin teams to clean up the mess while an agent coordinates it. Hopefully, we'll be able to find some clues as to who did this. We might be able to salvage something." "Hi Danzo-sama," said the agent. At the same time, Sasuke was admiring the stolen summoning scroll. Name after name of Uzumaki clansmen and women were listed. Perhaps this was what helped them gain the power and fame they once had. Well, in any matter, that power would soon be his. Without any more hesitation, Sasuke signed his name in blood onto the scroll. Sasuke then made the hand signs and prepared to summon for the first time. Yet things did not go as expected. As soon as Sasuke finished the jutsu, there was a puff of smoke, and then a hawk shot out of it right toward him. It moved with such speed that Sasuke was unable to fully dodge it. Talons pierced his shoulder, and he was pressed against the wall by this brown feathered hawk. "You're not Uzumaki," said the hawk as it moved its beak close to his eye. "You're Uchiha. Tell me where is the Uzumaki clan, or else I will gouge out your eyes." "They're gone," gasped Sasuke. "We know that," said the hawk. "Uzumaki is all but gone, that we know." "Oh, we know that all too well. But where are Uzumaki Kushina and her son? Tell me now." As far as I know, Kushina betrayed the village and is missing, said Sasuke. As for Naruto, he's still here, but doesn't seem to want anything to do with you. The hawk released his grip on Sasuke and flew away from him. He fluttered for a bit and eventually landed on Sasuke's kitchen table. Sasuke clutched his wound and hid his smile as his lies seemed to work. Nothing to do with us, muttered the hawk as he lowered his head. All these generations just to be thrown away. No, not possible. Not possible. Kushina, she who tended to us, would not leave us. But she has, said Sasuke as he sensed the hawk's doubt. You know it. Allow me to summon you, and perhaps we can help each other. At this the hawk's head snapped back up. Help an Uchiha? He cried. Why should I do that? Even if Our Lady has forsaken us and her son has ignored us, we would never lower ourselves to work under the likes of you. We remember your clan's sins. Who was it that tested their poisonous gases on pregnant women to see the effect? Whose clan has a brother that would turn on brother and friend against friend in order to taste more power? Who was it that claimed might equals right? Uchiha, that's who. So why should we allow you to summon us? Because you want revenge, declared Sasuke. I know, because I want it too. My family was murdered by my own brother. At that point, Sasuke had clenched his fists. I have to avenge them, no matter what. And to do that, I need power. Power that you can give me. Help me with my revenge and I'll help you with yours. The hawk stared at him for a while. Then it vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving Sasuke alone and confused. Had it worked? Would he be allowed to summon hawks? Or would the next time he tried be his last? Meanwhile, the hawk he had summoned reappeared in his homeland. It was an island covered with large, spiky rocks and deep canyons. The land was barren, so they had to hunt for their food on the nearby forested islands that surrounded them. That was how it had been for thousands of years. That was how it was going to stay for them. Takamaki, called out a voice from above. Takamaki looked up and saw another hawk, a white one, as it landed next to him. I heard you were summoned by the Uchiha, he said after he landed. How did they steal the scroll? I don't think they did, Takeami, replied Takamaki. The Uchiha spoke of Uzumaki betrayal. The Uchiha spoke of Uzumaki forgetting about us. Kushina, came a wailing voice from above. Both hawks looked upwards to the tallest stone spike, and saw the largest and most powerful summon of them all, Takeo. He was so large that one of his powerful wings could cover an entire football field. His feathers were gray while his chest was white with black spots. And on his back were two large katana swords. TSK, still he wails for her, said Takamaki in a cold tone. He has tried to reverse summon her many times in the past, but with no luck. Shall we remain here forever as we wait to be completely forgotten about? I shall not. Baka, snapped Takeami. Never trust the word of an Uchiha. Liars and betrayers all. He will use you and throw you away when he is done with you. You must find out the truth, for it will not come from their lips. Then I have no choice, said Takamaki. I will allow him to summon me and any other hawk that feels the same. And I shall allow him this privilege until the day I see the last of the Uzumaki and find the truth with my own eyes. Shion had been fast asleep for a while now. Night was the only time she could have time for herself when things like the tournament was going on. Personally, she hated it all, epically the first prize. And now, with both shinobi that were supposed to be representing her down in the prelims, she had lost all hope of no one winning. Her dreams were the only way she could get any escape now, even for a little while. Suddenly she heard a bell ring. One moment she was dreaming about being a normal high school girl with a military freak of a boyfriend who had no common sense, and the next she was in what looked like a battlefield. She saw herself on the ground, covered with dirt and looking like a complete mess. Over to the side there were two people fighting on what looked like a giant snake halfway buried in the mud. There was also another blonde woman with the largest breasts she had ever seen sitting next to her. She was watching the fighting and also looked scared about something. Shion noted the blood on the woman's clothing, but didn't see any cuts. The next thing she knew was that the blonde shinobi from the tournament had landed right in front of them. He was covered with bruises, cuts, and dripping blood. It was almost like he had tried to take out an entire army by himself. But the look in his eyes was refreshing in a way. He then smiled at the two. See, he said. I told you I wouldn't let anything happen to you. His eyes suddenly widened as the sound of chirping birds was heard, and he then seemed to brace himself. A moment later something bright shot through his chest. Shion winced at the powerful light, and as drops of blood fell on her face. And when the light ended she saw a hand replace the light blade. Never show pity, said someone else's voice from behind Naruto. And never turn your back on an Uchiha. Naruto did his best to stand up, but his hand-sized hole in his chest. It was a miracle that he was still able to stand or still be alive. He then looked at Shion directly in her eyes and grinned as he grabbed Sasuke's blood-soaked hand. What the hell are you doing? I promised you, didn't I? Said Naruto as he looked at Shion and the other blonde woman. I promised that I would protect you both with my life. And I never go back on my word. With that, Naruto shot upwards with his attacker in tow. Shion followed him with her eyes as they became filled with tears. And then, when they were nothing but dots, she saw a large explosion in the sky. Naruto! Screamed Shion as she woke up. Immediately her attendants came to her side as she was panting and covered with sweat. She had many visions before, but never one like this. And it scared her. Elsewhere, at the hotel, Naruto and gang were relaxing for the night. Well, for the most part anyways. Naruto was lying on his side holding his stomach in pain, and had been since his match ended. Oh man, moaned the blonde winged user. This is almost as bad as eating Haku Toko's cooking. It's like I drank a gallon of warm spoiled milk. Don't worry about a thing, Naruto-kun, said Hinata as she took out a small container. I have some medicine here that should help. At that, Naruto smiled. Thanks Hinata-chan, said Naruto as tears of joy appeared in his eyes. You're a much better medic than that big boob drunk that just sits on her ass while someone suffers and... Naruto was then cut off as Tsunade punched him in the head. Baka, she sneered. Next time think before you speak. I was just being honest, said Naruto. He was about to say something else, but stopped as Hinata began to pull off his shirt. Ah, Hinata-chan, what are you doing? Well, began Hinata with a blush. I need to apply this ointment on your stomach. Upon hearing that, Anko sat straight up with displayed eyes. A growl escaped her throat as she then stood up. Quickly she moved over to Hinata, grabbed her by her jacket, and began to pull her away from Naruto and out of the room. Hinata squared back and forth, but Anko refused to let go. Anko, what are you doing? We're going to the hot spring, said Anko as she slammed the door behind them. Now Setchus stood up with a grin on his face. Hot springs meant one thing. Naked women. Sure, Hinata and Anko were very hot, but they clearly liked Naruto. But that didn't mean that they were the only fish in the sea. He had already seen several hot women in the hotel, and who knows, he might get lucky and find a nice hole to peek through. With that in mind, Setchus moved over to Naruto and pulled him onto his shoulder. Yeah, I think a nice bath in the hot springs might do some good, said Setchus as they moved towards the door. Before you go, there's something that I must tell you, said Tsunade as she crossed her arms. With a deadpan expression, Setchus turned around. What is it? He sighed. It's a very interesting story, said Tsunade with a gleam in her eye. You see, there has only been one time when Jiraiya has been close to death. Both his arms were broken as well as 6 ribs. At the mention of the word 6, and seeing Jiraiya nod his head a bit, Setchus gulped. What's more, he also ruptured a number of his organs. All this happened when he decided to peek on me while I was taking a bath at a hot spring. Tsunade then gave the boys a full sweet smile. So in case you boys were planning on doing something stupid like that, you better think again. Setchus was sweating all over and shaking from head to toe. He had heard all about the legendary fight between this woman's team and Hanzo all those years ago, almost blow for blow. So he knew their strengths and what it would take to do something like that to Jiraiya. But having your own teammate try to kill you for something like that, that's what men do. Naruto looked like he heard it but was too sick to really care. This sucks, complained Setchus. For the last hour, both he and Naruto had been soaking in the hot spring. Naruto, who was now feeling better, had his eyes closed as he tried his best to relax. I mean, this is why men go to hot springs. To peek at the ladies. It is wrong. I thought you only cared about fighting, said Naruto. Setchus snorted. I care about other things in life, he said. I mean, my life is all about being the best shinobi I can be, but I still get urges. So what about your teammates? Asked Naruto. Setchus groaned. They're more like annoying sisters than anything else, he muttered. All they ever do is fool around and try to complete missions without any fighting. I mean, seriously, what's the point of being a shinobi without some action along the way? Naruto nodded. I mean, I'm not expecting every mission to be like the adventures of Fūton, but... Wait, said Naruto as he straightened up. You like the Fūton series? Hell yeah, said Setchus. I really like the one where she had to travel to the Temple of the Stars to start her training with the 7-colored chakra and then Moe attacked the village where her boyfriend lived in order to lure her out, finished Naruto with a grin. Too bad he died, but at least he did it to protect her. I was glad he died, said Setchus. He was a complete wuss like some of those guys you see in animes who get all the girls. Only time he showed any guts was when he distracted Moa for a second to allow Fūton to get that last attack. Suddenly, they both heard a beeping sound, and Naruto's eyes opened eye. Slowly, Naruto began to tremble a bit. What the hell is wrong with you? Shinobi Force 5 is coming on in 6 minutes, he said. Setch's jaw dropped. Suddenly they both stood up and ran into the men's changing room. Soon, both of them were running down the hallway in their robes with their hair all wet. We can't miss this, Setchus kept saying. This is part 5 of a 7-part series. Someone is going to die in this episode. As he said that, they both passed by Xian, who had gone to the hot springs to calm down and to get rid of the smell of sweat. I know who will die, she said as she stopped. Both teens slowed down and began to walk backwards. They were curious because this was supposed to be a new episode. The blonde girl then pointed at Naruto. Soon, you will die. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.